You know, guys, the definition of absurd is wildly unreasonable, illogical, or inappropriate, ridiculous. That's literally the definition of absurd. I'll read it again for you. The definition of absurd, wildly unreasonable, illogical, or inappropriate, ridiculous. Does that ring a bell to you guys when you hear the definition of the word absurd? Does WWE come to mind? Over and over again for you? Because it does for me. Right? When you think of how many times they've taken a concept that is actually pretty cool, pretty badass, and they have absolutely destroyed it by taking away the very foundation, the very core of what it was built on. They took it away. They turned it upside down, and they took what made it special and they made it absolute trash. Ladder match, for instance. Remember the first ever women's ladder match? Do you guys remember who won that? It wasn't a woman. It was James Ellsworth. But it's a women's ladder match. So how did James Ellsworth have a hand in that? Hell in a Cell. Right? Isn't Hell in a Cell based upon you go into that structure for one reason, so nobody can call the match. You go into that structure so nothing can stop what you need to do to your opponent. But what happens at this past year's Hell in a Cell? Well, the referee stops the match because he felt it was too extreme. It was going too far. But I thought Hell in a Cell, the structure itself, was supposed to be for individuals that want to take it too far. And then go over that line, cross it. The ladder match has been destroyed. Hell in a Cell's been destroyed. Where can we go now? Well, why not? Why not the Royal Rumble match, right? It's a very simple concept. 30 participants enter that ring, and whoever wins gets to choose. They're choosing at WrestleMania which champion they want to take on, which strap are they going to go for. But instead, WWE, because they're so lackluster, careless, and ridiculously lazy in their booking, they decided, why not just put our champion in the match? We won't even put the title on the line. No, we're just going to put our champion in there because we don't have anything else for them. So in order to get to their WrestleMania opponent, let's just have it be done in the Rumble itself. Because again, if we don't do that, then we have to use creativity. 2 times. We have to use creativity 2 times. We have to first think of a match for Brock and then create that whole BS. And then we have to use creativity in the Rumble too. So why not just mix it all together? Absurd. Absurd when I saw James Ellsworth in the ladder match. Absurd when I saw what happened at Hell in a Cell this past year. Absurd every single week, every single show that WWE produces. I can use that one word, absurd, to describe so much detail. Absurd. Wildly unreasonable, illogical, or inappropriate. Ridiculous. That is WWE's booking, and that is what happened with Brock Lesnar last night. And I want to start this whole review off with such. But before I do, I first want to get this out of the way because a lot of people think that a fan jumped in the ring last night after AJ Styles took off. Guys, that was not a fan. That was Rick Malone. He was the pastor in last night's Lana and Bobby Lashley wedding and last week's Lana and Bobby Lashley wedding. That was Rick Malone, the actor. That was scheduled to happen. That was all part of the act. He was going to jump in. That's why you saw the camera stay on AJ Styles for so long. You saw Rick Malone jump in the ring in the background, and that's when the hard camera actually showed the ring, and they even zoomed in, and then they cut to commercial. They wanted some shock factor. Paul Heyman and Vince McMahon, Kevin Dunn even, kind of, in the last 9 months, I've noticed that Kevin Dunn has tried to utilize this and it never works. This was the best utilization, but I still knew what was happening. But they wanted a little bit of shock factor, right? Oh, somebody jumped in the ring. We gotta wait till after commercial to see what happened. But even more so, it was to get the crowd in attendance a little more excited for what was to come, which was the Lana and Bobby Lashley re-wedding, if you will. So they tried to make some comedy out of it. The priest, the pastor was just trying to get in the ring, but he couldn't. Security tackled him. And they wouldn't let him in the ring. So afterwards, there was actually footage shown of the pastor trying to tell security, I have a job to do. I'm going to do this and then I'm out. So it turned into a comedy bit. It was not a fan. It was Rick Malone, the pastor. It was not an accident. There's a lot of reports going around that this was a mistake. Security was not tipped off. Guys, this was part of the act. You got to use your noggin, man. I knew it right from the jump that something wasn't right. They never would show it and then zoom in. Trust me. Kevin Dunn would have seen that and totally have stayed off of it. And then on top of that, you see the footage later and the way security is interacting with Rick Malone. You see this was all part of an act. So no fan jumped into the ring last night. I want to debunk that story right from the jump. I know it makes for some exciting talk, but no fan jumped in. That was Rick Malone. It was all part of the act. Now, if I may get back to the absurdity of WWE Raw, which is, yes, the bulk of the show, but one specific topic, and that is Brock Lesnar. So are you guys ready to lower your IQs and dumb yourselves down a few notches? Because boy am I! Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman kicked the show off, and this is no joke. Paul Heyman says Brock Lesnar is entering the Royal Rumble. And not just entering it, he's going to make history and enter at number 1 as a champion, even though I believe just a few years ago, something like that, man. I think Roman already did this, but he's talking about history because WWE is always trying to rewrite their own history. It's what they do. But Lesnar entering the Rumble is the big announcement that Paul Heyman had for Brock at the Rumble. So your champion is gone for the better part of 2 months. I believe the last time we saw him was maybe Survivor Series. Was it November, guys? I think it was. So you're talking rest of November, December, now we're in January. So the better part of 2 months, this guy has been gone, hasn't had to defend his championship. And when he comes back for one of the big 4 pay-per-views, right? Rumble, Mania, SummerSlam, Survivor Series. This is one of the big 4. Kicks off WrestleMania season. He comes back after 2 months, and he still doesn't have to defend his championship. He finds a fucking loophole, and he gets to go into the Rumble match. How does that make any sense? It doesn't. It is absurd. It's absolutely wildly unreasonable. It is illogical. It is ridiculous. Brock Lesnar, after 2 months, comes back. And instead of defending his championship, instead of having a championship match awaiting Brock Lesnar, you had 2 months to come up with an opponent, 2 months to build somebody up, but instead, you're putting him in the Rumble match. The whole concept of the Rumble is to pick the champion. After you win the Rumble, pick the championship and the championship holder that you want to go after. Now you're putting your champion in the match. The strap isn't even on the line. So what is the purpose? How does this make sense? You are absolutely taking what the Royal Rumble is based on, and you are absolutely stripping it of its identity. That's what you're doing. Now the champions can just enter and take that spot. And what? Become Brock 2 belts? Is he going to go after The Fiend, 2 heels? Because The Fiend is being booked as a heel. Brock Lesnar is not going to be a face. That would force The Fiend to knock out of that heel character, but that's where he is best at right now, so nobody wins in this situation. And are we going to get Brock in that ring, tossing out one individual after the other? Brock the Beast is going to be the dominant individual because every year the Rumble has one dominant individual. One guy that takes out about 10 dudes. Do we really need Brock in that role? Is it realistic? Is it believable? Absolutely. Do I like seeing Brock built and booked in that way? Absolutely. The Rumble is not that spot for him. There are dudes on that Raw roster that would have been awesome in a matchup with Brock at the Rumble. Samoa Joe is now a face. This would have been brilliant. Paul Heyman comes out last night and literally says nobody would step up to Brock, therefore he's not going to defend at the Rumble. And all of a sudden Samoa Joe comes down. He could still have the side feud with the AOP, by the way, and the whole Seth Rollins deal. But Samoa Joe steps up to Brock and says, just like I did with AOP and Seth Rollins, I don't let bullies run my life. I don't let bullies run around unchecked. And that's why I'm stepping up to this bully as well. And you have Samoa Joe and Brock Lesnar at the Rumble. No harm, no foul when Brock defeats Samoa Joe either. Because earlier in the night at the Rumble, I would have AOP backstage attack Samoa Joe to the point where you don't even think Samoa Joe can compete. He still goes out there, has a badass match with Brock Lesnar at the Rumble, and just wasn't able to do it. Either AOP cost him the match or helped Brock, or after the match, even though he gave it his all, but the beating was too much earlier in the night by AOP, and then after the match, AOP come to the top of the ramp and they start smirking, laughing at Samoa Joe's loss. And this could further your Samoa Joe AOP Seth Rollins feud if you want to do such. But as a little side detour, you could have had some cool shit with Samoa Joe and Brock Lesnar. Drew McIntyre, he looked like he turned face last night in that match with No Way Jose. He's asking the crowd if they want more Claymore kick. He's counting them down. It looked like he was a face. You could have had him step up to Brock. No harm, no foul. That would have only done wonders for Drew McIntyre. Even if he lost, BC, you can't just have Drew lose at the Rumble. What is Drew going to have if not against Brock? Drew is just going to be another participant in the Rumble. And he's not going to be the dominant participant because it already looks like it's going to be Brock. So Drew, whether he's losing or not, in a match with Brock at the Rumble, pretty badass. Drew said it himself. Since he's been on the main roster, he's never had a championship title match for the heavyweight title. You're telling me that wouldn't be better? Any of those scenarios, I'm picking dudes on that roster that would be awesome in a title match right now with Brock. But instead, they throw him into the Rumble because from what some people are actually okay with this too. This is mind-boggling to me. BC, this is where we're going to find out who Brock's WrestleMania opponent is. Obviously, that's where we're going to find it. Obviously, he's going to chuck people out, and then somebody's going to come in that's going to take him out, and that'll set up probably a WrestleMania match, obviously. But the point is, that's how you went about it. You didn't want to get creative, so you just said, we'll just take care of that in the Royal Rumble. You couldn't have just gotten creative, man. You have 165 suits and ties. You have Vincent Kennedy, you have all these executives, right, in their little suits, and you all gather around a boardroom meeting, and that's the best you had. You had nothing, no championship match for Brock. You didn't know how to get the Brock's WrestleMania opponent, so you're just going to have him show up at the Rumble. Inside the Royal Rumble. It's just absurd to me on the highest of levels. You have some people in the community, journalists, analysts, fellow YouTubers, they're thinking this is a good thing. You have actual I use this loosely, journalists, analysts, and fellow YouTubers that are trying to put a positive twist on this. They're trying to give you some positives to Brock Lesnar being in the Rumble. The point is, the bottom line is, if you want the actual fact, the Amplified Man is here to give it to you. There is zero positive in this. People are just going to be held back because of this. People that could have shined in that Rumble are going to be held back. Could you imagine how cool it would have been if somebody like Aleister Black out of nowhere just starts chucking out individual after individual? Could you imagine if Aleister Black, somebody like Black, took out 7, 8, 9 individuals in that Rumble? But because it's going to be Brock, you don't have that. People can get made in the Rumble match. And now you just have Brock, who's supposed to be on his own championship match. Let the other individuals try to create who they are in the Rumble match. But no, they're going to blur the lines. They're going to mix the two. And the title isn't even on the line, guys. At least in the past, they've had the title on the line. I remember Ric Flair had the title on the line. I think the whole Roman situation a few years ago, the title was on the line. And in this one, the title's not even on the line. This dude has been gone, and he's been disappeared for a couple of months. And when he comes back, he still doesn't have to defend the championship. I miss the days when Jack Tunney, that's right, there was a dude named Jack Tunney. He was an older dude. It was maybe 80s, even going into the 90s, I think. But Jack Tunney was the president of WWE. And if you didn't defend your championship in a certain allotted amount of time, at one point it was even 30 days. You had to defend it every 30. Then I believe it got bumped to 60, maybe even 90. But there was a certain allotted time. And if you didn't defend your championship, Jack Tunney, he would strip you of that championship. Man, I miss those days. I really do. Because now you have a title that's not even being defended for a few months. The dude's not even showing up. And when he does, and again, I like Brock too. So that's how you know I'm calling it down the middle as I always do. I like Brock. And thinking about Brock chucking people over the top rope one after the other, there's a part of me as a fan of Brock that's like badass. But as a fan of pro wrestling and knowing what is correct and what is wrong, this is a wrong situation. This is not the situation Brock should be in. So Brock going in there, it's just, I just can't fathom the title not being on the line here. After 2 months, he's disappeared. He comes back. He doesn't have to have a match. He goes into the Rumble, and everyone's allowing this. There is no structure. There is no authority figure at all, like a President Jack Tunney or a President Gorilla Monsoon that can say, wait, no, you're trying to find a loophole. You have to defend. So a dude doesn't show up for 2 months, and then when he does show up with that championship, he still doesn't have to defend it. If you guys are okay with that, or you're trying to put a positive twist on this, this is definitely not the channel for you. But even more importantly, I don't know your way of thinking. I don't understand it. I don't care if Edge or The Rock or John Cena is supposed to show up and eliminate Brock. CBC, that's fun. That's entertaining. Guys, you have to get more creative. You could have any one of those individuals show up and start something with Brock for Mania. It did not have to be in the actual Rumble match. Hope that makes sense, man. Because it's for WWE, obviously, they're killing two birds with one stone, right? They're going to make this much simpler, right? It's going to be easier for them. They don't have to use too many brain cells. But for the fan base, we're thinking, or at least us smart ones, man. You don't even got to be that smart. You know, just have some sense of logic and common sense. Us fans are thinking, how does this make sense? The whole concept is because individuals want a shot at the champion. So they're going to try to win this one match, and then they're going to pick the champion of their choosing. Now you threw in the champion, and the belt's not even on the line. I'm just going to go in circles here of how absurd it is. But that's how mind-bogglingly dumb it is to me. And it should be to you as well. As a pro wrestling fan, more specifically a WWE fan, this should not sit well with you. You should not be putting any positive spins on this. Nothing good comes from this. It's absolutely fucking mind-bogglingly stupid. And that's how we started Monday Night Raw. Paul Heyman announces that the champion will not have a championship match. He's just going to put himself into the Rumble. So he can't lose. He doesn't lose the championship, and if he wins, then maybe he gets to go for the Fiend. How does this... I have to move on, because otherwise I'm going to lose brain cells if I keep talking about this. Rey Mysterio and Andrade with Zelina, the United States Championship rematch from Madison Square Garden. That is up next. This was an okay match. It was nothing grand, to be honest. And I was still dumbfounded with the whole Lesnar Royal Rumble situation, so I couldn't even really focus on this match. But it was nothing... Let's put it this way. I've seen when Andrade first got to the main roster, or when Mysterio got back, I should say, I saw a plethora of matches between these two, and they were good. And for the first couple, they kept upping it. But after 4 or 5 matches that I saw between Rey and Andrade, I was done with it, you know? Now they're trying to reflame this again with the United States Championship dangling over them, and I think I've just seen them too many times. Whereas somebody like Buddy Murphy and Aleister Black, I can watch them 10 shows in a row and probably still be entertained. With Mysterio and Andrade, as much as they're really good and as much as I want to see Andrade get a huge push, and because he is so damn good, I think with Rey and Andrade, once you've seen 4 or 5 of those matches, that's pretty much it. It's done. You know, you're not going to see anything new. And that's what we've seen last night. You're not seeing anything new, and now it looks like it's even going to be dragged out to another match between these two. But as was expected, Andrade picks up the W, and afterwards, as an insult to injury type situation, Andrade actually ripped the mask off of Rey. So that's what tells you right there there's going to be. And then afterwards, a few segments later, Rey Mysterio actually attacked Andrade backstage. So that tells you there is going to be another match, most likely at the Royal Rumble for the championship. So again, it's just entertainment-wise, I think we've reached the peak with these two. There's nothing more they can do. They gave us everything the first time around. Now they're trying to rehash this at Madison Square Garden last night, and now again at the Royal Rumble. Maybe even next week they'll try it again, and then there'll be another match at the Rumble. Who knows? But they're going to work this right into the wall. And I've already seen enough. I don't need to see any more between these two. Let Andrade take that championship after the Rumble. Let's end this, and let's let Andrade just run this thing right into WrestleMania. Give him a huge push. And if he's going to lose it at Mania, it better be to a worthy opponent. But that's the whole Andrade Rey Mysterio. If you guys thought I was going to praise this match last night, I'm not. I've seen that type of match between those very individuals time after time. I want more. Let's raise the bar. Hour number 1 ends and hour number 2 begins with the tag team championships on the line. A triple threat schmaz match. Who's not excited? Me. Street Profits, Viking Raiders, and the OC. Man, I gotta be honest with you guys. The WWE has sucked any love that I once had for tag team wrestling. The WWE has sucked that out of me. Honestly, and I mean that. A triple threat schmaz match for the tag titles I have seen time and time again. Tag team matches in WWE no longer feel important. They no longer feel special, and that's because the tag teams don't feel special or important. So the tag team division, these tag team matches, they do nothing for me. When I see a tag team match, I literally want to go to Starbucks and get a coffee. I know when I come back, I'm not going to miss anything. I don't know. Again, this was the 1,614th time in the last 5 years that we've seen a triple threat schmaz match for the tag titles. And this one ends with the Viking Raiders defeating Carl Anderson. Creativity? What's that? This company has no idea. Carl Anderson and the OC eat another loss. The OC is absolutely done now. They had a chance when they hooked back up with AJ Styles. I really thought the OC was going to be a dominant faction. They have turned out to be nothing but losers. The same Anderson and Gallows that Vince McMahon was booking before the OC title. Now they just have the OC moniker. They're still the same losers. Unreal. Becky Lynch starts yapping next, right? And this is one of the feud/storylines that I was actually into for WWE heading into the Rumble. Becky Lynch and Asuka. I was kind of into this. If done correctly and they use their creativity or anything, any creative juices that they do have in that company, if they use them the best to their ability, Becky Lynch and Asuka could be something good at the Rumble. But already, they've ruined it. Becky Lynch comes out. She starts yapping about how important this is to her. Asuka then comes to the ring. Becky Lynch punches her. Asuka's knocked out. And that's the whole segment. Can't make that up. That was it, guys. I swear to you, I can't make that up. That is no joke. Asuka comes to the ring, cuts Becky off. Becky punches her. And it was the weakest punch. Becky had no momentum. Becky didn't have enough separation. Becky just it was like when Lacey Evans first got to the main roster and her right hook, remember how it just didn't even land half the time? I mean, Becky Lynch just did like a little 4-year-old little punch. I mean, it was bad. It was real. Even for Becky Lynch standards, it was bad. And Asuka gets dropped. And Becky Lynch, whoa, her song starts playing, and we're thinking something else is going to happen. That can't be the whole segment for Asuka and Becky. That was the whole segment for Asuka and Becky. Legit. Oh, wow, man. Eric Rowan is up next. He defeats Screamin' Sammy. Afterwards, Sammy heads off screaming because he came face to face with whatever is in that cage underneath that cloth. Rowan put his face right up to it. All of a sudden, Screamin' Sammy is busted open for some reason. He starts screaming. He's like, it was it was kind of funny, actually. So I guess it was entertaining in a small kind of way. Now, after an hour and 48 minutes, I finally saw something I really liked. It was a squash match with AJ Styles defeating Tozawa. But I loved how Styles was imitating, I'll get my I words correct. He was imitating Randy Orton throughout the match, from the DDT to the RKO to even Orton's pose. Styles was basically acting as if he was Orton, really trying to push the envelope, push Orton's buttons, And next week, they're going to have a confrontation, obviously. So I like that, man. If you're going to put the spotlight on Styles, do something meaningful. If Orton isn't there anyway and you're not going to progress this storyline with any physicality, have Orton really get the number of, Styles get the number of Orton. And that's what he did in that squash match. I actually like that. Something that simplistic can actually be creative and entertaining. Wow, they did something I liked after an hour and 48 minutes. That's when, of course, the fan jumped in the ring again. That was Pastor Rick Malone. It was not a fan. He was just setting up, getting the crowd kind of hot with the segment to come, which was Lana and Bobby Lashley. And that's what happened. We started hour number 3 trying to do the wedding all over again. And this time it was right to the point. Rick Malone, the pastor, pronounces Lana and Lashley husband and wife. Rusev appears on the Tron. It looks like there's some tropical background behind him. He's on vacation, supposedly. And Rusev said that he got them a photo album as a wedding gift. And it was just all the misadventures from last week's wedding, and Lana being in the cake and Liv Morgan interrupting it, all of that stuff. It was all in a photo album. So obviously Lana's upset, Bobby Lashley's upset. Lashley grabs the mic and tells Rusev, if he's got any balls left, show up next week and he's going to rip them off of him. So I love that. At one point, Lashley even told Lana to shut up because he was so upset, so pissed off. And Lana's looking at Lashley like, excuse me? But Lana could see that Lashley was actually showing passion finally. Lashley wanted Rusev in that ring. So Rusev said, oh, you got it. You're going to get the Bulgarian Brute, I assure you, next week. So, I don't know, man. At least, even though we want this to be done with, at least they're finally showing passion, right? They both finally really want to get to one another. So maybe they'll just tear each other apart next week. We'll see. Charlotte versus Sarah Logan is next. Not even sure if there was a winner here. I don't even think there was. Logan flips out on Charlotte's robe. Just starts terrorizing Charlotte's robe. Sarah Logan she's infatuated with the robe. And she starts slamming it to the mat, trying to rip it apart. Who knows? So Charlotte is pissed off because that's her favorite robe. So Charlotte gets retaliation for her robe and takes out Sarah Logan on the outside of the ring. That was it. I think her music just played. I really don't think there was a winner here. Or maybe there was some type of weird I don't know. All I remember from this is Sarah Logan flipping out on Charlotte's robe and Charlotte flipping out because her robe got slammed to the mat. And that was the segment. I don't understand why we need to see Charlotte every week if you have nothing for her and the crowd doesn't care about her. There's so many females that could be being utilized. We need to see Charlotte Flair at least once a week for nothingness because it's Vince's golden child. Drew McIntyre is up next. Drew McIntyre defeats No Way Jose in a squash match. I really like this. In the process, he even took out the Conga Line members. And Drew just looked like a beast in this match. And then afterwards, he added some comedy too. He took the mic and he said, this was nothing personal. I just don't like Conga Lines. So it was funny. And he went a little face last night. He played to the crowd. He even asked them if they wanted to see another Claymore kick. He asked them several times. I like this, man. You know, I don't like the fact that they just turn people heel and face without any explanation. They just go out there and all of a sudden they start turning heel or face. There's no reasoning. I don't like that. But I love the fact of how, Drew McIntyre just looked like a beast. More importantly, he got to show several different styles on the mic, from comedy to just badassery, because he literally put himself in the Rumble and said, I've never had an opportunity at a championship. I'm not waiting anymore. I'm taking it. So he had all different kind of spectrums on the mic. And the extra Claymore kick, playing to the crowd, it shows you that people are behind this guy. You know, if WWE can just get behind him, the crowd will. You know, he does have it. It's just they never get behind this guy fully. They give him a little bit and then they take him back, just like everyone else. And it really hurt him. To the point where a lot of people who wanted to back him probably never will again, no matter how much Vince ever pushes him in the future. Some people may never get behind Drew. That's how much they've ruined people like him and Braun Strowman and so many others. But I love how Drew was booked last night as far as the style of squash match, and adding the conga line into it and them getting all taken out, and then the mic job afterwards with Drew McIntyre, and even playing to the crowd. I don't know if this leads to an actual face turn, and I wish there was more substance if it was going to be a Drew McIntyre face turn. But if you watched that last night, guys, I know a lot of you guys don't watch. You just watch my reviews. And if I tell you guys you have to check something out, then you guys will take my advice and go watch it. Well, this is one of those things. I know it's just a squash match, but you go back to that and you tell me if Drew didn't look like a face in that match. I don't know. Interesting to see where we go from there. But it's refreshing to see Drew look so good in that ring last night. Aleister Black is up next. He defeats Shelton Benjamin with Black Mass. Buddy Murphy attacks Black post-match, and I'm just loving all of this. I didn't mind the Shelton Benjamin-Aleister Black matchup, to be honest. It just, I don't know. So I know it's Shelton Benjamin, but something about it, or maybe I'm just really high on Aleister Black more than ever lately. Maybe that's why I enjoyed it, but I enjoyed those two. And then when Black Mass was delivered, one of my favorite maneuvers in pro wrestling because it's delivered so badass. And then post-match, Buddy Murphy just getting really physical with Aleister, and took him to the outside and literally put a knee to his dome piece, then put the chair underneath his chin and delivered another knee to his dome piece via the chair. It was all just beautifully done, and Buddy Murphy looked like an absolute monster in there last night. So I'm really, really looking forward to the next installment of Buddy Murphy and Aleister Black. I don't even need to see them inside the Rumble. Just give me another match between those two at the Rumble. I'm good. I want to see them for 15 minutes just do the deed. So I enjoyed that as well. So the oddly enough, the third hour really started picking it up for me ever since the AJ Styles squash match and him just impersonating Randy Orton. And then I also like the Drew McIntyre squash match because I felt there was substance there with him, and not enough. If you want to go a full face turn, there wasn't enough substance, but enough substance to make Drew McIntyre look like the badass that he is. And then going into the Aleister Black-Shelton Benjamin match, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And then post-match with Buddy Murphy, I enjoyed even more. So I started to string together some things that I actually enjoyed. And then it all came to another sudden halt. That was the main event. Now, throughout the night, they pumped up this big third mystery partner. The match itself was AOP and Seth Rollins taking on Kevin Owens, Samoa Joe, and this mystery guy that Samoa Joe says he found. Okay, so we're all thinking it's WWE. It's not going to be anybody that special, right? Because they always underwhelm us. But as the night went on and they kept making it a big deal, you started to think maybe it's somebody of importance. Maybe it's a big name. Maybe it's somebody that's going to make us go, whoa. And instead, we hear, well, it's a big show. I can't make this up, guys. The Big Show's music starts playing, and all of us, I'm sure, right? I'm sure there's one or two out there that were, like, excited, right? Like, the crowd in attendance, a lot of them were actually yelling, we want Big Show, once they actually started the match. But if you're like me, you were like, and I know there's so many like me out there, we were instantly, from the time we heard the music, we were like, no, whoa, no. Dude, brah. Seriously, 2020, that's how we're kicking off the year. The Big Show is your big... Guys, it wasn't even like the Big Show was on the program. That'd be bad enough, right? But the fact that they built the show around his arrival, the Big Show, that tells you how sad of a state we are at right now in WWE in 2020. That tells you how poor the business is right now, or at least that company, when you see that they have to revolve a whole show around the Big Show. And that was your main event. Big Show, Owens and Joe versus AOP and Seth Rollins. After 8 minutes, that's right, just 8 minutes, Rollins uses a steel chair and the match ends in a DQ. Post-match, Big Show knocks out Rollins, and that's the show. So Seth Rollins does this big heel turn. You think they're going to have a huge heel push for Rollins that'll really pump up some faces in the company? And instead, Big Show comes back and totally knocks out the heel turn by Rollins. Rollins and AOP are supposed to be a dominant faction, right? Just like we were hoping OC was going to be. The Big Show just punches them, and that's it. That's it. It took the Big Show to kill the momentum, or any momentum that Rollins and AOP actually had. And for what? Who cares about the Big Show? Nobody. And do you know why? Anybody that thinks I'm being mean right now? Oh, what do you mean, man? There's people that care about him. You're just being negative. Well, here's the thing. WWE never cared about Big Show. Never cared about Big. If they cared about the Big Show, they wouldn't have called him the Big Show. That's one of the goofiest names I've ever heard in pro wrestling. But they called him the Big Show, and then they always made him a joke. They put him in diapers at one point. Remember, he was the New Year's Eve baby? So if they're not going to care about him, why would we? The answer is, it's rhetorical. We wouldn't. And in 2020... we're definitely not going to. And that's how they went off the air. Big Show just knocks out Rollins. You know, I don't know, guys. There's a few matches, like I said, it was the squash matches. And I've told you, right, this is how consistent I am. I've always told you, squash matches have their place in pro wrestling. Squash matches can be very vital to building people up. And that's what we saw last night. You know, you hate to see people like Tozawa go down in defeat and be called a jobber. I understand. You hate to see No Way Jose be called a jobber. I understand. Shelton Benjamin, I understand. But these type of squash matches are needed. And they can really do wonders for individuals if done correctly. And that Aleister Black match, it was done correctly, because afterwards the Buddy Murphy showdown with Aleister, that was pretty cool, man. Seeing Drew McIntyre and what he did in there with No Way Jose, and then afterwards him on the mic and the second Claymore kick, you know, that all was with purpose. AJ Styles just kind of imitating Randy Orton, I should say. You know, that has its purpose, and that'll feed into what happens next. So, you know, those little small details, the many, they're not so small to the amplified, man. So I liked that stuff. And that's where the positivity ends in this whole show. Everything else, mind-boggling to me. That's how you booked Becky Lynch and Asuka, one of the very few matches that people were actually looking forward to for the Rumble. And Becky Lynch just knocks out Asuka one punch, and it was so mediocre, that punch. And on top of that, that's how you end your show. You bring back the Big Show. That's your big surprise. And he just knocks out Seth Rollins just like Becky Lynch takes out Asuka with one punch. You got the Big Show taking out Seth Rollins in one punch. You got Brock Lesnar saying he's not going to defend his championship at the Rumble. Yes, he hasn't defended it in months, but he's also not going to defend it at the Rumble. In fact, he's going to enter the Rumble, which is not for champions, but he's going to break the rules. And nobody's going to stop him, because screw it. There are no rules in WWE. It's anarchy. We change things. Yes, it's a women's Royal Rumble, but we're just going to have a dude win it, or help win it. Yes, it's Hell in a Cell, but we didn't really mean hell. Like, we mean play nice in there, or we'll stop the match. Yes, it's called the Royal Rumble, and yes, the whole concept is whoever wins gets to go to the champion. But we'll just throw the champion in there. No title on the line. We'll just change the rules in the most absurd ways possible. Because we're WWE. It's what we do. Right? If there was pictures in the dictionary, right next to absurd, you'd see WWE's logo. I'm the Amplified Man. That was the most truthful, factual, raw review you're going to get in this community, I assure you. As much as that might be hard to swallow, that is the truth. And we're not going to stop. We'll be doing it for SmackDown later in the week. We'll be doing it for AEW and NXT come Thursday as well. So a lot of reviews still to go. There'll most likely be an impromptu video or two this week as well. So stay subscribed and notified. You guys know it. The Amplified Man. I'll see you later in the week. For now, kick this Tuesday's ass like only the Amp unit can do. Think, be, live. Amplified. Always. Check you later.